Hello. Hi, Beth.
I'm like, I'm
Uh,
here, I promise. I'm here.
No worries. We're just letting people into the call.
Awesome.
So excited.
There I am. I hid my self view before.
Oh, no worries. Right. Hi, Michael. Right. We'll give people a couple more minutes to join.
Totally. So I'm so happy to be here with you. Um,
Yes, we're so excited to have you.
I do have a presentation, but I also saw that we have an amazing 7 people who are going to be on the call today. So if you wanted to do a little bit of Q&A and a little bit of training or either or, so we can really serve your community, I'm down for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically what we'll do is we'll have you start with like your intro and going through like your presentation and everything. And then that last like 15 minutes will be
Right.
like open for Q&A and any questions that anyone has or wants to work through.
Awesome.
Yeah, just wait a couple more. I think we're waiting on a couple people and then we will get started.
Awesome.
And Cecilia, Michael, if you guys want to drop in the chat where you guys are from, where you're joining us today from. Beth, where are you located?
I'm in North New Jersey.
Oh, nice.
How about you?
I'm in Florida, Orlando.
Oh, nice. I was just there.
Yeah? Were you
Yeah,
at
I was at a
Disney?
conference. No,
That's awesome.
no, I took that yellow train from Palm Beach all the way up
Oh,
or over.
perfect. Yeah. The bullet train.
Yeah,
How was it? Did you like it?
it's super easy. I've done it a couple times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
I
nice,
still
easy.
haven't done it. I want to do it to go down to like Miami. I usually just drive because it's nice to have my car down there, but I feel like it would be fun to take the train sometime.
It was. You could work the whole time. They bring snacks around.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Oh my
San
God,
Antonio. Michael's from San Antonio. Cool.
nice.
All right. So I'm gonna have you just go ahead and get started, Beth. If you want to jump in, I'll be here to let people in if they do jump in, so you don't have to worry about that. Let me just
Awesome.
make sure you have permissions to share your screen,
Just pull everything up.
and you should be good to share now.
I was just going through everything just to make sure I'm on page one so we can start.
Yeah.
There we are. Okay, so let me share.
Oh, I think you muted yourself.
Oops. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Beth Nydick. I live in New Jersey. I'm a former TV producer. And what I really want to talk about today is podcast leverage, monetization, amplification, not just being on a podcast and being like, okay, that was fun. I'm going to put it in my story once and I'm going to move on. So, what we're going to talk about today is actually what you can do with the business asset that podcast guesting is because I really firmly believe it is a business asset. It is not something that you're just doing because everyone does it and you get visibility. Like to me, visibility is the same thing as thought leadership. It means actually nothing. Visibility means for me is what you're doing with the visibility you have in front of people rather than just telling them you're on something, showing them, teaching them, letting them see who you really are. So, what we're going to talk about today is how to make 10K for your next podcast appearance. Because I know none of you and any of those watching are guilty of being on a podcast, sharing it in your story once, and then never thinking about it again. Never again after today will you do that because you're going to learn. Okay, so let me share my screen. How to make 10K for your next podcast appearance. I'm just going to open the chat so I can see all your beautiful faces. If you do have any questions, I give myself a thumbs up. If there's any questions that come up while I'm trying to get the chat to come up while we're talking, feel free to put it in the chat and we can go back to them or we can go back to the conversation after. Okay, so I want you to ask yourself, are the podcast guest spots you're on currently, or you were just on, think about the last three you were on, did they make you any money? Or was it just nice to say you were on podcasts when everyone talks about the podcast you're on? If you're not making money every time you step up to the mic, you're leaving cash on the table, and we're going to change that. So I was everywhere. I did all the things. I landed in all the places, and I felt like a freaking celebrity, but I wasn't gaining income from all those activities. The realization that visibility without strategy is just noise. And once I changed the way I was thinking about it, and I want to change the way you think about podcast guesting today, that's when everything opened up to me. That's when I like cracked the code. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because we have a big problem. Oops, sorry. We have a big problem in digital entrepreneurship, is that we think being on a podcast is going to change your business. I'm here to tell you it's not. I'm also want to introduce myself. My name is Beth Nydick. I'm a former TV producer and the founder of Mike to Millions. I created the only profitable podcast guest system there is out there, because we don't settle for exposure alone. It's really about what you do with it, how you use it, how you show up. And we're going to go through all the things you need to think about differently today, because you are leaving money on the table. Podcast guesting is powerful, but only if you know how to leverage it. Because most experts, not anybody here, but other experts, they listen, right? They go on the show, they talk about their thing, they share some random story, and they hope somebody connects to it. They hope something sticks. But hope is not a business plan. So I'm going to show you how podcast guesting can actually work for you and make money. By now, hopefully you've said to yourself, yeah, Beth, I do one of those things, right? You're going on the show, you're dropping knowledge, but nothing's coming through the DMs, through your emails, or any other carrier pigeon. You're not alone. Most people make these mistakes because they don't have a system. They don't guide listeners through the conversation into the next steps and then have any follow-up. Most people go on to have a conversation, not institute a repeatable process so every podcast guest turns into revenue. Because I firmly believe that you create your own possibility of success. Nobody else does. And I say this to mean nobody's going to teach you, nobody's going to come save you, nobody's going to do anything that actually changes the trajectory of your business unless you do. That means showing up on platforms, doing it correctly, selling your stuff. You can create your own possibility of success. And that's the basis that everything I do is actually built on. So by the end of the conversation today, you're going to understand the strategy, and it's not theory. Take out your notebooks or your Google Drives. I think this is being recorded, so you'll have the transcript, because I'm not about fluff. If you haven't figured it out already, that I'm from North Jersey and we don't do fluff here. I really, thank you for laughing. I really wanted to create a roadmap, and that's what I do in communities, is I teach you this roadmap so that you never podcast guest the same way again. Okay, so the first shift I want to talk about is that you think that you need more podcasts. You don't need more podcasts. You need to be on the right podcast. Everyone kind of puts podcasting in one bucket. Like, well, I'm going to go on podcasts. There's different types of podcasts for different types of things that you're doing. And when you think about the strategy behind choosing shows that bring you high-paying clients instead of just listeners, instead of just having conversations, I'm going to teach you what that is right now. So there's 3 different kinds of shows, and we're going to go through them, because the secret is that not every podcast is actually worth your time, and you don't need to be everywhere. You only need to be where your ideal client is actually listening. I know, crazy, right? Only be on the places where people who are listening will actually buy your product. Because expert authority shows, right, those are audiences that trust their host. That's your credibility play. The niche, because those audiences already have the problem that you solve. That's your sale play. And the storytelling, well, that's how you connect emotionally and make people feel the trust that they need to actually work with you. So let's go through each one of them. Authority shows are trusted by leaders in your space, right? Those are the shows you want to be on. Those are the audiences that already believe in them. And when you come on, you get automatic credibility, because when you land a spot there, that audience is primed to see you as the go-to expert they need. It gives you that credibility that you hadn't had before. I've been on some top shows, and now when I talk about what I do or I put out my bio for something else I'm doing, I'm putting those shows in there because it's giving me that instant credibility. The second one is the niche. This is my favorite kind of podcast to be on because you're talking specifically to the person that you want to talk to, right? If you're going on a business podcast and you're talking to all different kinds of businesses, but if you're going on a podcast that sells widgets to horse trainers and horse trainers are your ideal client, that's what you should be talking to. I recently was on a podcast where I was talking to marketing assistants. I want marketing assistants to learn my system so they can serve their clients better. And when I had that conversation on that podcast, it was different than conversations I have on business podcasting in general. The third one is the storytelling podcast. That's one where you're talking about who you are and what you're about, and people buying from you are learning that they can trust you because they're feeling seen, they're feeling heard, they're feeling understood from the conversation you're having. Most experts waste their time on just a podcast that have zero alignment with their business goals. But when you can focus on each one of these, that's when the path to revenue comes free. I know I just gave you a lot of information, but let me just open the chat. Let me find the chat. Sorry. Make sure there's nothing in there. Okay, awesome. So let's go on to the second shift. Is people think that their expertise is enough to attract clients. But the truth is, if your message isn't strategic, you're just giving out free content and people probably aren't listening. You have to structure your story so that it demands credibility, but it also demands for people to want your offer. It attracts those leads and turns listeners into buyers. So I have a 4-part story framework that we can go through. And the first part is the hook. Because remember, when you're telling a story on a podcast, it's actually not about you at all. And it's not about the host. Hosts hate it when I talk like this, and good, I like them too. But really what I want you to understand is that the story that you're telling better be about the person listening. How is your audience seeing themselves in the conversation you're having? Because a powerful story doesn't inspire, it moves people to take action. And the action we want people to take is to give us their email address. The second part is conflict. This is more personal. This is like your specific conflict, but it really is their specific conflict. What conflict are they going through? What are the struggles they're going through? So by you telling your story, they can see themselves in what you're doing, and that builds that automatic trust, that automatic authority, so they know that they should listen more, that they are part of what you're trying to create. The third part is the journey. That's that part that made you realize that what you knew, your knowledge, your creation, whatever your product is, how you got to that aha moment for your product, that's what this part of the conversation is about. It's that resolution, and it shows how your solution that you're offering them in your offers, how that is what they need without being salesy, without feeling like they're being sold to, or you feeling like you're trying to sell to them. It was like, I realized X, so I created X for people like X. We're showing them how your transformation that you offer is what they need. This is like the part in the story where people lean in, and this is where you know you got them. The fourth part is the resolution, because now your audience is ready to take action. It's time to lead them to the next step. And the resolution should feel effortless. It shouldn't feel like, okay, now go download my checklist, right? It's having the conversation on the podcast so that the solution or the resolution to their problem is buying your offer. This is one about how you're telling the story, how you're showing up on the podcast, and how you're explaining what you do, who you are, and why you are the person for them. The third one is the follow-up, because the conversation on the podcast is the tiniest bit of the conversation, right? What are you doing before the podcast, during the podcast, and then after the podcast? Because most people, which makes me crazy, is that they just kind of like ghost them, right? Because you're not losing out on clients because your interviews aren't good. You're losing out because you're ghosting the people that want to work with you. Most people go on a podcast and feel like, well, if they hear me, they're going to want to work with me. That's not actually how it works. Your follow up, the back end of it is what you actually need to do so that people can find you, can understand you, and then pay you, because that's actually what we want. Because I see it all the time. People are running from like podcast to podcast and they use those freaking logos like badges of honor. And then they still wonder why their business isn't growing. Because visibility without follow up is just noise. Again, you don't need more interviews. You need to plan and turn the ones that you are already on into actual revenue, because your problem probably isn't getting booked. Everyone's got a friend who's got a podcast. It's what happens after the interview that's important, because your episode should not be a one and done event. You can turn it into posts and carousels and emails and all different kinds of marketing. But one tip I'm going to give you here is that when you're talking about your episode, when you're putting it out there, most people write, "Hey, I was on this episode," or "I was so honored to be on Society Gal's podcast." My response to that is, why the F should I care that you were on a podcast or that you have a new episode out? Tell me why I should care. Hey, on this episode of the Society Gal podcast, I talked about things I've never talked about anywhere else. You want to know about why I XYZ? Well, listen. Isn't that more interesting than "I'm so honored"? I don't understand the honored part. I don't understand why people go there, but I want you to just know that you should never go there again. Because I've used this framework. This is what I call the Mike's framework. This is the method. You want messages that convert. You want intentional guesting, knowing where you're going and what you're doing. Call to action clarity. How are you creating this repeatable funnel for people to go into? And then streamlining the follow-up about the episode. Because you might be thinking, telling a good story is great, Beth, but how do I really make my podcast interviews work for me? There's a couple different things that we can do that we talked about. We're going to be on the right shows. We're going to tell the right stories. And then in the follow-up, not only are we going to share our podcast everywhere, but we're going to create an opportunity for the hosts. Let me go back to this part. The opportunity for you to connect back with the host over and over and over again, to be on that podcast over and over and over again. And I think that's one of the pieces that people miss out on all the time. They're on a podcast, but it's almost like networking. It's almost like going back and having that conversation so that they know what you do. So when somebody says to somebody that I know, "Hey, I really want to learn how I can make more money from podcasting," or they talk, "I need to be on more shows." My friends are like, "Go call Beth." And my audience is, "Go call Beth," because they know what I do and they know how I do because I explain it on every single podcast. It's not from my marketing. There's too much noise in marketing. When you have somebody listening to you on a podcast, that is a captive audience. And if you don't treat them well, then in the first 3 minutes, they're going to click off and listen to a different podcast. So I want you to think about how you're attracting podcasts, which ones you're on, and how you're thinking about them differently from now on. Because this is the point in the conversation that most people say to me, "But I don't have a big audience." And I want to say, neither do I. I have, I think, about 5,400 podcasts, 5,400 followers on Instagram, but I've only grown that in the last 2 years. Before that, I had a very small audience, but it didn't matter because the podcasts that I was on were turning into revenue. Because you don't need a big audience, you just need the right audience. Let's think of it this way. Podcast listeners are pre-warmed, right? They're not cold, they're not warm, they're pre-warmed, and they're engaged and they're listening to you for 25, 35, 45 minutes. Turning that into paying clients is how you use it as a business tool rather than this visibility that doesn't go anywhere. The second thing I hear from people is like, I'm not good at selling. I don't want to be pushy. I hate selling. Who loves selling? Nobody actually does. But when you're on a podcast and you're using it correctly, you don't have to sell at all. Because instead of awkwardly pitching, you've heard those people. "Well, if this resonates with you, go to my Instagram and blah." Oh my God. That's not going to help me figure out if I like you or not. But through the conversation, if you're guiding me in the next steps, if you're seeing me and verbalizing what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, you're going to make sense to me. It's going to feel natural. It's not going to feel forced. You're not going to feel sleazy. I love it when I hear people tell me that they don't sound like a used car salesman anymore. like real organic conversations that lead to paid clients. The third one's my favorite. And I don't know if it's the right time. It's the right time. I don't know if anybody listening does not think it's the right time. I'm telling you it's the right time because you are podcasting. And if you aren't, let's get on it. Because podcasting works across every industry. If you're a coach, it works. A consultant, it works. A product, it works. An author, a speaker, or service provider, 100%. It's not about what you do, it's how you're communicating who you are and what you're about, and how they know that you are the solution to their problem. So you don't need a big audience. You don't need to be good selling. You're not too busy because this saves time, energy, and frankly, those long ass sales calls are a thing of the past because you're not winging it anymore. You're showing up with a strategy and you're using podcast guesting as a visibility tool so that it can actually become your most profitable lead gen tool. And that's exactly what podcast guesting should be all about. So if you're ready to monetize it, so now you've seen what's possible. Now you understand that a podcast guest without a system is money left on the table, and having a clear strategy so you can turn it into revenue. Please, please, please don't let another podcast guest go to waste. Use it for your business so you can get to your goals. And if you want your next podcast to be a 10K payday, you can have the right system. I created a podcast profit playbook that goes over a little bit more of the mistakes that we went over today. It gives you that step-by-step monetization plan that we covered today. And you can master that framework, because if I ever hear again on a podcast somebody telling me 16 different places to find them and not the actual place to find them so I can have them be the solution to my problem, because I want you to think about visibility and podcast guesting as a revenue tool and a system for you to make every interview turn into a 10K payday. And again, only because you create the possibility of your own success. Let's start using something you're doing already, something that everyone should be doing already, to actually work for you and not just be something that takes up time and doesn't give you revenue. So I'd love to open up the floor to see if anybody listening has any questions, comments, concerns. Things they don't agree with is good too, but just open up so I can serve you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth. That was awesome. Michael, Cecilia, do you have any questions for Beth?
No, I don't have any questions.
Thank you for watching, Cecilia. I know it's a lot of information, but what I really want to get to is understanding that podcast guesting is really about leveraging it and using a strategy behind it, and not just going on because you can go on.
I have a question now.
Sure.
I usually work in restaurants. Do you think that if we have it's like a group of restaurants, if we have the idea to have a podcast, what do you think we are going to do? Maybe talk about the business, talk about the food recipes.
Oh, definitely food and recipes. I don't think people care about a restaurant's business, but they care about what the feel is like, what it looks like, recipes. Did the recipe come from the chef's great grandmother? What's the history of the recipe, the feel of the vibe of it? I think also recording in the restaurant could be fun too.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Michael, do you have a question?
Podcast myself. That's my main venture in this sort of field. So, I guess cross promotion and just getting on other podcasts and getting myself out there is probably the smart move here, based just on what you're saying. So I'm just kind of sort of digesting everything on that end, as opposed to I'm used to doing it from the other side, so having my end of running the podcast, but thinking about guesting elsewhere is,
Oh,
smart
guesting
idea.
is going to get you more viewers, right? Like if you're guesting to get people to come back and listen to your podcast, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and
Makes
having something for them to opt into, like some sort of email list, doesn't need to be a lead magnet, but at least like getting the updates of your next episode would probably be a great strategy. But I think most of my clients are experts that have their own podcast and they use podcast guesting to draw audience.
What would you
Awesome.
say is the best way or frequency that you should be like promoting a podcast episode you've been on? Obviously, like, you can have been on it like months ago or whatever and like want to bring it back up, but what would you say is like when you've gotten the full like amount of marketing for that it's like, okay, I can start talking about this episode I did or whatever.
Never.
Never? Okay.
Never, because as long as the information that you're saying is
It's
still
still relevant.
pertinent,
Mhm.
like I was just on Cubicle CEO on their podcast I'm like, what month is this? I was on in April. I shared it for a week in April. I took 2 weeks off. I shared it for another week in May, and then I'm going to share it again in July. But then I'll start sharing that podcast. It's a big podcast, right? They have a lot of audience. It's very recognizable. And when I share it, they reshare it. If they didn't reshare it, then I probably wouldn't be doing it. But that I'll reshare every 3 weeks for a quarter. And then I'll share it every 3, 6, and 9 months, every other quarter. So it's always, because as long as the lead magnet I talked about on the podcast is still viable, I'll keep talking about it. And it's really about the credibility that gives me and the clout, but also like the snippet, right? Making sure the asset that I'm sharing, because it's not just about go listen to the podcast. I'm never telling anyone to go listen to the whole episode after the first month. I'm telling them I'm on it. Here's what I talked about. Get the lead magnet.
And do you treat like the podcast listeners that sign up for your lead magnet like differently than you would just signing up for your lead magnet in general? Like, should they be tagged differently,
Yes.
nurtured differently? Like, what does that nurture look like?
So if you listen to a podcast I'm on, I'd be like, Michael, thank you so much for having me because I love being on this podcast and I love your audience. You know what? If you DM me the word Michael, I'm going to send you a podcast specific freebie that I only give to my listeners because I have that lead magnet funnel is only for podcast listeners. And it talks about me being on the podcast. So I don't have but if I'm on a bigger podcast, that nurture sequence is directly against whatever that podcast I was on. Like the Cubicle C or even Lori Harder's, it talked all about Lori in the 5 to 7 emails. And then that went to either a phone call or to a low ticket item. It didn't go to my lead magnet. Because I think that it's a warmer audience than just somebody who sees you on social media and downloads your episode on your lead magnet. They've listened to you for 45 minutes and then downloaded your lead magnet. So I think it's a pre-warmed conversation.
The aspects of having a guest on and then trying to use this information, try to like leverage their audience for my own, to kind of bring them in by promoting the fact that they're on there or whatever. But so it's like, again, like you were saying, it doesn't matter how big the audience is or the guest is. I guess I can just kind of get whatever their natural audience is. Oh, that person was on my show, so then they want to come hear the episode and might generate that business from them. So that's cool.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing that would do with podcast hosts like you is I would get the guest, if they have like a nice size audience that you're selling to, is go live on one of their platforms like Instagram, go live to tease the episode. Because not only are they going to be promoting your episode, but now you're on their platform and do a collaborative post together. That's what will get you the most new listeners. Awesome. Well, good questions. I wrote down 2 of your questions, guys, because I was like, okay, I can do some content to like your post nurture sequence, what that looks like, and getting more people on your podcast. So that was helpful in me too.
What would you say is like first steps on like increasing your amount of like opportunities for getting on guest podcasts?
I would make what's the right word? A list of 20 of your friends that have a podcast and literally DM them. Hey, I just listened to your episode about XYZ. You haven't had somebody like me on. Can we have a conversation? Can I be on? Like, it's just about asking them. No, I feel like everyone really focuses on like cold pitching. And I'm
Hmm.
like, don't you know enough people? Like, or if you see a friend of yours is on somebody else's podcast, be like, hey, can I get an intro? Podcasting is actually networking.
Yeah.
So if you make a list of 20 people or 20 people that can introduce you to 20 other people, I am regularly pitched podcasts now, but I'm not pitching podcasts. Like I just had a conversation with a woman that I was just on her podcast. And I was like, whose podcast should I be on? And she said somebody. I'm like, great, can you introduce me? Like nicely, right? Because I'm creating a relationship with that podcast host. I'm not just going on their podcast and then never talking to them again.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of something that a lot of our community kind of struggles with is like feeling like they are giving that person the value, even though they might not have like a large audience, but it's like they're pitching themselves right to their friend or whatever it is. So I think that that really is something that would be good to talk about, Beth, of just, how can you show your value to your friend or someone you know that has a podcast, even though you might not have like a large audience or something like obviously that would be beneficial for them to be exposed to.
Well, it's not really about your like if they have a big audience. I'm not like when I have people on my show, like I'm not worried about what your audience is. I'm more thinking about what does my audience need to hear to
Mhm.
continue listening to me.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
doesn't really matter. Like I have a woman on Friday who's a psychic.
Oh, cool.
I don't even know what her audience is, but I met her at an event and I was like, oh my God, come like let's go on my Instagram and give me a reading. Like that's gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
Right, just to show because that's a little bit more about like I love that stuff and I don't talk about this stuff. So now I can talk about it differently on my show.
Yeah, that's great. And I think people, yeah, need to remember that if you solve a problem, that is key. Like, I'm sure your guests have that same problem, so
Yeah.
that's valuable enough.
Yeah, like whatever. Everyone thinks that their solution's not unique, but it really is. Right. And that's why if am pitching a friend of mine on their podcast, I'm looking to see who they've had on like me before. And if they haven't had anybody like me on in like 3 or 4 months, then I'm going to pitch them.
Yeah.
Or be like, hey, I saw you had somebody else like me on 4 months ago. Can I come on in November? But it's having the balls to ask. That's what I feel like is the barrier for a lot of people. But if you remember that you're the content and that podcast isn't going to go on without a guest. And if they don't have content, then they have nothing. Then why not you?
Yeah.
That's really my mantra for my whole life is like, why not me?
I love it.
Awesome.
I'd love to have you kind of just tell us how we can work with you. If there's any resources or
Yeah,
helping with
totally.
your
Well, there was one in the
podcast.
presentation, but I have a challenge starting on Monday. It's called the Be Visible Challenge. It's totally free. Facebook group, Zoom room. We're going to go through 3 levels of visibility. So if anyone's interested, go to my Instagram bio. It's in there. If you go to any of my marketing in the next 5 days, you'll see it. So come join us. And we're going to be talking about exactly what we did today, how to make 10K for your next podcast appearance, how to actually use podcasting for good rather than for nothing.
I love that. And what's the challenge consist of? What will you be doing?
It's 3 days, half an hour every day. And we're doing how to tell your retellable story, how to get clients to come find you. And the third one is about the CTA, how to tell a real CTA so people come and download or find whatever you're talking about. Because I don't know if maybe hopefully you'll recognize this going forward is like a lot of people, well, on this platform you can find me as AYZ, and on this platform it's ABC, and on this platform you're like, or like go find me and like Michael, you have like an easy spelling name, but I don't have an easy spelling name. And Cecilia, who's going to know how to spell Cecilia the way you spell Cecilia? So why are you sending them to a website where they can't even spell it? And no one looks at show notes. right?
Yeah.
When I'm listening to a podcast, what am I doing? I'm walking, I'm in the car, I'm doing laundry. I'm not sitting at my desk listening to the podcast. So if I can remember, if you're rememberable enough for me to go find you later on one of the social media platforms, it's just a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially because I did a post this morning where I tagged Society Gal. So right, so looking and whoever did your social media, hopefully you'll share it. And that way, then usually when I do these community talks, that's happened already. I think it happened a little late on my end. I apologize.
That's okay.
But that for me, like that's one of the ways that I'm like, hey, go to Society Gal's Instagram because you're already part of it. You'll find me there, and then it's easy to find me. Like it's thinking about the ways that are making it easier for that host to connect with their audience and that easier way for you to connect with their audience. Like my name's Nydick, so how I usually tell people is New York Dick. You think people don't remember that? They always do.
Definitely do. That's
It
great.
just worked, right? So whatever you got, make it work for you.
That's awesome. Michael, what kind of podcasts do you have?
It's excuse me. It's called Wish We Were Then. We look at like a year in the past, and like we just did an episode yesterday. It was on 1976, and we'll take a look at like the news stories that came out that year, and then also the top five on the Billboard charts, and the number one movie in the country, and then just other kind of different stuff, inventions that came out, and different things like that.
That's cool.
Oh, cool.
Is the guests like, do they just talk to you about that year?
Well, that's what, the thing we've just been, it's really research intensive. And so it's just the episodes we've done, we're still starting out, but the episodes we've done have just been me and my co-host. So we've talked about wanting to get guests on. We're just still trying to figure out exactly what that would look like because it's really contingent on how much they want to put effort into researching the year beforehand, or do we just go off a year that they should probably remember, some of the stuff we're talking about. So,
Like their
you
birth
know,
year? Like, what have you
Yeah.
actually watched?
yeah. I mean, there's different kind of ideas about what to, especially for older years. That's like we're both, 32, so we
Me.
have we have knowledge up until a certain point. But once like yesterday, we didn't have any firsthand knowledge of this. What happened in 1976. We just know like the movies and things we've seen. So we talk about Marathon Man, but it's not like I went and saw it in the theaters.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's really cool though.
Makes me think I listen to so I'm a 70s baby, but I love the movie Grease, and that was in 1976, right? I think 75,
Yeah.
76.
I think
And
that
like
was after that.
78 maybe. It's
Yeah, I
definitely
can't remember. It wasn't 76, I don't believe, because I
oh, he did
probably would have
76.
mentioned it. Yeah.
But it was a the guy the guest was a expert on the movie. On because there's Grease 1 and Grease 2. And he
Yeah.
was talking about behind the scenes and how John Travolta almost didn't do the movie and like all this stuff. It was so fun.
78.
70. Yeah, I just was gonna say too.
Yeah, we were close.
I just watched the second one for the first time recently.
It's awful.
It's so bad, it's so good, right?
Yeah.
It's like a totally different, whole different style of movie. It's so funny that they're the same, like in the same saga.
Watching the
I would
first
do the
one all the
marathon.
time. Yeah, I love the first one.
Or like all the Indiana Jones movies, right? Like they were on TV last night.
That
So
would also be a cool thing to just have somebody come on and talk about like the first set of Star Wars movies versus the second set, like kind of thing, and like how they like differ and all that. Because
Yeah.
it's really different, like just how when they do remakes and all that stuff too.
oh, we're doing remaking of everything and it's
Oh, I think you're
That's
muted
so
or
naturally there's like a lot of there's a lot of opportunities to spark conversation like that. If we're just talking about in 1976, Ginsu knives came out. That's just one of the things I remembered suddenly that we talked about. And it's just, we didn't really have much to say about that, but it's like, oh, someone might go, oh, I have a funny story about that, and then I have a way to jump in without having necessarily researched Ginsu knives before they come in. It does have a lot of opportunities for different places to begin. So that's why I said I don't know if I just want them to come on and have maybe just say like, hey, the year is 2005 next week. What's your favorite movie off of this list of movies? We'll watch that and talk about it. And then the rest of it, they can just decide if they want to do any research or not, or.
Yeah. Or you could even do like events that they like, events that people remember from like for example, we're the same age. So, you're like, oh, okay, well, like, what do you remember about this thing that happened? And it's like, okay, well, I remember my parents talking about it or whatever
Hmm.
it is, and then kind of going from there. And I remember seeing Titanic in theaters, but
That's
like
actually the movie that we're doing next week.
really?
Yeah, we're 1998, so I got to watch Titanic this week.
That's so funny. Yeah, I remember seeing it in theaters and being like horrified because I was young, obviously.
Yeah.
And the specific scene that got me was the little kid, like the boy that's like going in the hallway looking for his parents, and like the water's like coming through. And I just remember being like, why did my parents take me to see this movie? That's horrible. And I had like nightmares about it and everything. But like obviously I watched it after that when I was like older. But like I just remember specifically that scene. And I mean I was 6 or 7 years old. So of course it was like, why did they take me to go see that?
Yeah, you were young to see that kind of movie.
Exactly.
I remember watching Poltergeist when I was like
A sign of the
9.
times, right? Like thinking about now, like there was nudity in that movie. Like, why did my parents think that was a good idea? But okay.
It's funny. That's Poltergeist is a pretty classic example, I think, of people having seen a movie too young. I think it's because it's Steven Spielberg, and it was, so people assumed it was going to be a nice thing, and
Wasn't.
so
Some
many
people
children have seen
traumatized.
that. Yeah,
I remember that one too.
way too many kids have seen Poltergeist.
That's so funny. Well, what's the name of the podcast, Michael?
It's Wish We Were Then.
We
We
wish.
are still in our early stages of getting. We're wrapping up getting the early episodes edited.
Awesome.
We wanted to get a bank of them. He just had a newborn recently, so we thought let's stack up a couple episodes before we start putting them out. So we're getting the first handful of them edited and finished and ready to go. But
That's great. Well,
we kind of
congratulations.
decided next week is the week that we want to start putting them out. So
That's awesome. Congratulations. Good luck
thank
on
you,
the
appreciate that.
launch.
Very cool.
But yeah, we definitely need to start doing the social media things that we've already been promoting them on the episodes we've recorded, but we haven't set them up yet. So we're like, we need to get on that really quick so that way we have stuff and something to point people towards. Like at this situation now that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm about ready to start putting them out, but I don't have anywhere to tell people to get updates about it or anything else. So I know I've been
Yeah. You're
lagging
starting
on that,
email
but
list right away.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
getting
I got
people,
work to do.
right?
And Beth, what's your podcast called?
I actually don't do a podcast right now. I'm doing an Instagram live show,
Oh, okay.
which means the people I'd have on the podcast, I go live on Instagram. I just didn't want to do the whole podcast thing. So honestly, instead, what I do is I record it, it goes on YouTube, and then my team scrapes the audio and puts it on my podcast platform. It's working really well. We have a nice amount of downloads, and I don't have to do any of that back end podcast stuff.
I love that.
Cool.
What's the platform that you're using?
I have no idea. It's called Lisbon,
Oh yeah. I've heard.
but and I really don't direct a lot of people there. It's I'm trying to use it to build my YouTube channel instead.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes with a podcast, if you're a service provider, you're like so trying to keep them on your social media to keep them integrated into what you're doing to then go put them on they're like, oh, now go listen to this platform. I just don't think it makes sense for my people at least. So I do it
Yeah.
that way.
I mean, a podcast can be just a whole job. I mean, it's way more intensive than I can see why so many people quit because it's like, man, I had to research all that, then record it, and then now I'm having to listen to it again so I can edit it and do all this stuff. And like, I'm starting to go like, man, am I even that funny? I should maybe not should cool it on
Gotta
those
start
jokes,
looking
man.
at my jokes.
Yeah, these episodes are long. I need to talk less.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Beth, for coming on. And obviously, I think this is going to be valuable for our audience. We'll send out the replay
Awesome.
first, and then if there's any like links or anything you want me to include in that, just let me know. Uh,
Yeah.
or shoot me an email. That works too. Hello
Okay.
at societygal.com. And then Michael and Cecilia, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Of course. Bye, everyone.
Bye.